Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, guys, there's a couple things from Egghead which are bothering me. Not bothering me in like terms of I dislike this, but I wonder how they're going to be used in the story, because clearly they're important, but in what way matters. So let's weave ourselves a fanciful tale and come up with something a little tinfoily. As always, like, subscribe, click the bell, all that jazz you guys already know. So the thing that we have in Egghead that is poorly defined right now is Punk Records. Punk Records is stated to be kind of this internet type One Piece thing, and the potential of it applied to the story is kind of massive. It's almost like so massive that you're not sure whether it's actually going to be used or not. But like, we want it to be used, right? Is it like cool Egghead specific background or what? And the other thing from Egghead that I think we don't have a great grasp on is the role of Kuma. We've spent an exorbitant amount of time following Kuma's journey from being saved during the reverie to leaving Kamabaka Kingdom, now climbing the Red Line. Something is going to happen there, and I think we're gonna get some closure to this sooner rather than later, potentially at the end of this arc. So to get creative here, and there's a great chance that this is not exactly right, and it's honestly not important if it's not exactly right. This is just a theory and we're playing with ideas. But chapter 1067 of One Piece is titled Punk Records, and in this chapter, Vegapunk explains the robot that was kept hidden in Egghead. He tells the story of 200 years in the past, the robot, for some reason, waking up and then climbing the Red Line, where it caused some sort of mayhem. But whatever happened was probably covered up, it was defeated, and its deconstruction ordered. However, the scientists realized the value of it and managed to hide and preserve it, such that Vegapunk has it now and can utilize it in order to try his best to recreate it, which is something that he stated that he did. He tried to recreate this robot, although it wasn't perfect because he lacked the eternal flame. But I don't think that this is a coincidence, guys. This robot, 200 years in the past, for some reason activated and climbed the Red Line. And in this very same chapter, we see was the moment that Kuma decided to leave Kamabaka Kingdom. And we didn't know this until a couple chapters afterwards, but it then follows in the footsteps of said robot. Kuma also climbs the Red Line. So we know the vast majority of Vegapunk's technology is based off of Ancient Kingdom secrets. And Vegapunk is pretty open about the majority of these things being a failure, that his country Egghead is not as advanced as the Ancient Kingdom was, and everything that he's creating is a lesser than thing. But in this very same chapter is when we learn for sure that Vegapunk is a perfectionist, and that he considers a lot of things to be failures, which definitely are not, including Momonosuke's artificial devil fruit. So my opinion is that Kuma, who Vegapunk has been altering, is also based off of this Ancient Kingdom robot. Let's be honest, Vegapunk has been studying this robot for years, most likely well before the experimentation and creation of Pacifista was a thing. And in the process of copying it, he has given Kuma, either accidentally or on purpose, the very same programming. Look, man, I'm just trying to figure out why Kuma is doing what he's doing, and I can't figure it out. Like, seriously, nothing intuitive comes up. It almost has to be crazy. Otherwise, what's the point? This is also kind of a question I'm asking you guys. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. It could be something different. I don't know, man. I need to know. Help me. But if I'm gonna get crazy, I'd rather do so with you guys watching every moment of it and laughing at me when inevitably it is far less crazy. The idea that I have is that the reason the robot climbed the Red Line is foreshadowed by the very same chapter. Its title specifically. The title is Punk Records. It is now officially time to strap on your tinfoil. I believe that the Ancient Kingdom had their own version of Punk Records. Remember, everything that Vegapunk has invented is in large part inspired by the Ancient Kingdom. Vegapunk makes knockoff tech. So Vegapunk made Punk Records. It is then likely the Ancient Kingdom had something similar. And Jinbei had some concerned comments about the potential of said technology. Isn't there some things that could be wrong with this kind of technology, like brainwashing? Inserting biases straight into people's minds? The question I want to pose is, was this technology used in the past? And if we're talking about brainwashing on a mass scale, everybody in the world all connecting to one central brain, which has the potential, like Wikipedia, to be edited. Is this how the Void Century was created? It seems incredibly plausible to me. And I understand that that means very little to a lot of people. But as with all things, technology develops in stages. You don't just usually have the final version of something in the first go. You have predecessors, beta versions. To me, something like punk records connecting directly to the brains of everybody that's living is your final version. You had to start somewhere else. And in my opinion, maybe you started with robots, sending signals and commands to them from anywhere in the world. Long story short, guys, is I think that the punk records of the Void Century still exists. But what doesn't exist are the things that are meant to connect to it. And this punk records has recently been reawakened. This is an explanation for the mystery of what the hell Kuma is doing and why it matters, all foreshadowed, wrapped up in a very tight bundle in chapter 1067. But there remains a glaring unanswered question. Kuma has existed, however, in his state for years now, and it is not until this moment that he begins to climb the red line. So what was the trigger? Frankly, our speculatable options seem very limited, and I don't think that it is a coincidence that chapter 1067 was almost immediately after Imu activated the weapon and destroyed Lulusia. This weapon, perhaps, is also a robot. I really don't think it's too crazy that Imu used the Mother Flame, a lesser than to the Eternal Flame, sure, but still usable, to power up Punk Records, which is also your control panel for the weapon. Something here? Yay? Nay? But essentially, I think that the story of the robot 200 years ago is going to play out again, and this time we're gonna have a better understanding of what the robot was actually trying to do. And here's another theory for you. After the last chapter, it appears as if Imu does not actually have a lot of reservations from creating a power which might be similar to the ancient weapons. We thought, or I thought at least for a long time, that the world government was more purposeful, that essentially they could have found the ancient weapons but chose not to, and or weren't necessarily tempted. But for the most part, these thoughts go out the window when Imu blows up Lulusia. Honestly, you get the impression in the last chapter, Imu was rather eager to see what the weapon could do, like a kid with a new toy. So it brings up the question for me of why the world is less advanced than it was during the Void Century, and was it really Imu and the 20 Kings that were responsible for this? So full disclosure, and obviously I made my review for this chapter, but my thoughts have changed. I've been persuaded by people in the comments who have argued that Vegapunk did not create this weapon that destroyed Lulusia. Vegapunk created the Mother Flame. As stated, Vegapunk wanted to create the Eternal Flame, but his experiments failed, so the Mother Flame is like an inferior version of the Eternal Flame. It's simply this invention which was utilized by Imu and the Gorosei as the power source for a weapon that they already had, which might very well be the ancient weapon Uranus, but it was just powered down. And so this kind of thing, if it's true, reconstructs how I see Imu and the government. Not that they're against technology, but that the technology that they had, they couldn't utilize. So we know that during the Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom was highly advanced. I think that all of their tech ran on the same power source. It all ran on the Eternal Flame. So the reason why the world went backwards in time, technologically, is because when the Ancient Kingdom disappeared, so did the Eternal Flame. But so here's the thing, right? What makes the Eternal Flame an Eternal Flame is it has to be eternal. Like the sun, it can't simply run out of power. So if Imu perhaps desires the Eternal Flame, then Imu and their faction likely did not destroy it. So if it's gone, the ones likely responsible are its creators. I think that the Ancient Kingdom purposefully hid the ability to create the Eternal Flame and unplugged or destroyed the thing itself. Or, based on some of the other things that we've said, maybe they edited Wikipedia. And suddenly the Unibrain don't work. I've actually got thoughts about why they would do that, but I'm kind of saving it for another video, so I'm just gonna leave you hanging. Sorry, guys. One theory quickly becomes 10 theories before you know it. Everything is sort of interconnected. But needless to say, Vegapunk's invention, the Mother Flame, is a big deal. It gives the world the possibility of tasting the technology of the Void Century without it being permanent. And as we know, right, the ancient weapons are their existence and information about them is documented on the poneglyphs. In my opinion, this is because the Ancient Kingdom had some use for them. But if we're arguing right now that Imu possessed the ancient weapon Uranus, and that the ancient weapon Uranus was lacking its power source, then there's really no point in having a poneglyph which tells you about Uranus if you can't actually do anything with it. I'm sorry I gotta be logical like that, but yeah, right? Joy Boy, Uranus is great, but what do I do with it? So in my opinion, it is kind of necessary for the poneglyphs to tell people how to recreate the eternal flame. Or I suppose where to find the one that they already made that was never destroyed, it was just hidden. And this would also mean that the Ancient Kingdom expected, at some point in time, the ability to create the eternal flame would return. I think that we know that Joy Boy was a lot like Luffy. Most likely. Wouldn't it be just great to have a Joy Boy joke delivered from 800 years in the past through a message? And at the same time, imagine the questions that this would spark across the world, as suddenly everyone receives a message from some character that isn't even written about in history. Even if it doesn't reveal too much, it could be game-changing. All across the world, people may begin to question what it is that they know and what it is that they don't. So unlikely or not, I am rooting for this possibility. If we establish that Kuma is climbing the red line because the giant also did it, and that there's some reason that they're programmed to do so, and that secretly hidden in Mariejois is the Ancient Kingdom's version of Punk Records, something's gotta come from it. And the answer 5 times out of 10 in One Piece is a joke of some sort. Joy Boy's editing the Unibrain so that all their technology is lost because the technology turned out to be a bad idea. And as he is about to press delete, he's got a Luffy-esque great idea. And damn if I just don't want people in the current timeline to get a little glimpse, just a flash of Joy Boy of the past. But let's ground this video some up and make sure that we say something that's probably true. The idea of ancient technologically advanced robots who no longer have access to their power source is something that we've already seen, specifically in Enel's cover story. He visits the moon, and there he finds an ancient civilization buried under the ground. Enel, of course, being the very definition of 9,000 IQ, decides to attack the city with his electricity powers, and lo and behold, suddenly, this dormant kingdom awakens, including their entire legion of automata. I would bet a ton of money that when the Eternal Flame is rediscovered, the Ancient Kingdom is going to awaken in a very similar way. Whoever does so will then have access to the Ancient Kingdom's technological might. Just as we see in Enel's cover story that he awakens the moon and then has an automata army. But the key thing about the automata is that they're more like people than I think a lot of people would have expected. They have individual personalities. This is depicted in the cave wall art that Enel observes. As the ancient winged people left the moon, you see the automata crying. They aren't soulless. I think that this is a thought that not too many people have considered, but given that this technology was present with the automata from the past, why wouldn't it be applied to the giant robot we have just recently met? So the idea is that these robots, just like Vegapunk, were connected to a Unibrain of the Void Century. This is how information was shared. When the Eternal Flame was destroyed or lost, the Void Century Punk records turned off, and these robots could update no further. Eventually they would all power down. But this one robot managed to survive. How? We don't know. Maybe it was charged by accident, we can only really speculate. But perhaps you have insight here for the robot's final command. That the last thing that they all were ordered to do was to return to the Red Line for whatever reason. Another thing that we learned recently, Imu appeared to not like the fact that the poneglyphs were distributed during the Void Century. He blames Vivi's ancestor Lily for this. Lily made a huge mistake. From this comment then, I would suppose that Imu would have an interest in gathering the poneglyphs, if for no other reason than to prevent people from reading them, because that was never Imu's intention. But to take this one step further, I wonder if Imu suspects that written on the poneglyphs is the knowledge to recreate the Eternal Flame, which we've argued now Imu desires. So the point, guys, is that Imu wants the One Piece, which makes them a player in the game, and is a justification for my current headcanon that the end of the story takes place in Laugh Tale, and every single faction will be there, including our cute giant robots who have probably very hilarious personalities. Anyway, guys, I wanted to make this short and sweet. I hope that this was entertaining and enjoyable. As always, if you have thoughts, leave them in the comment section below. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, Volume 1 and 2 is out. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.